what motivated you to change careers?
Well, I was honestly burned out. I was laid off in a wave where 500 people were laid off, as sometimes happens. And at that point, our son was out of college and had his own career. And I was interviewing for jobs because that was kind of what I was conditioned to do. My mom was on a salary, my dad was on a salary. I grew up that way, and my heart wasn't in it. And I came home, from one of these interviews, and I said to my wife, I know I could do that job, but I just don't want to. And the employer probably picked up on that too. And she said to me, well, you don't have to do that. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And she says, well, look, those jobs you had were so high stress. I would rather have an alive husband rather than a dead vice president. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of profound.
Wow.
And she went on to say, look, those jobs have been, yes, they paid great and you had great benefits, but you were under such stress and you worked such long hours. I was always afraid that I was just going to get a call that you had a heart attack at your desk, or you had a heart attack in the middle of the night in bed with me, or whatever. And she says, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. And she said, let's start a business. And I'm like, I hadn't thought about that. And I'm like, I don't know what kind of business to start. And I was kind of interested in software, always have been, since the late 80s anyway. And she said, well, I've always believed in real estate. And I'm like, well, maybe software, maybe real estate. And then we talked about it for a few weeks and said, okay, real estate. But we didn't know what that looks like. My wife believed in her heart deeply in the value of real estate, but we didn't know how to act upon that.
And how did you find our event, our inner circle?
For lack of knowing what else to do, I signed up for an online training program to become a real estate agent. And I felt that it wasn't my life calling to be a real estate agent, but I didn't know where else to start. And I think what happened is because I signed up for that, I started getting emails and online ads, and I signed up for some meetups for real estate events. And somehow going through that online process, I found this thing called Phil Grove's 3-day event. And we're like, well, this looks kind of interesting. And I think it was, I don't know, $100, $150 or something for a married couple to go to it for 3 days. We're like, that sounds interesting. Let's go to that. So my wife and I went to that. And when we walked in the door, we were just completely clueless about how to act upon the idea of being in real estate. And we were clueless about how to be a real estate investor. And that 3-day workshop opened our eyes bigger than the Grand Canyon. It was so informative. And we felt that Bill and Shanoa were very genuine, very authentic. They really wanted their students to succeed. And so after that, then we signed up to join their inner circle and benefit from their network and their training program.
What was your aha moment?
I think my aha moment was when Phil talked about buying a house with leaving the existing mortgage in place, what he calls subject to. And I thought that was like profound. It's like, wait a minute, you can do that? Well, obviously you can. He said you can do it. He's done it plenty. And I used to think you had to be like Bill Gates or Mark Cuban to invest in real estate. And having worked in higher education for a long time, I wasn't Bill Gates or Mark Cuban. And when Phil explained subject to, that was my aha, like, wow, this is doable, and you don't have to be Mark Cuban or Bill Gates.
And so I guess looking back, if you did not have been laid off from work, losing your job and applying for new jobs again, you would not be here today. If
That's
everything,
probably true. And it was in some ways, it was a huge blessing that I got laid off, because it led to this. And there's another part of the story that, when I was in those executive jobs, I mean, literally it was 24/7, 365. Literally, I would wake up, I would set the alarm and wake up, at 2 a.m. to have a phone call with Shanghai, which was 2
yeah.
p.m. their time, and wake up at 6 a.m. to talk to Eastern Europe. And I mean, it was literally 24/7, 365.